The moment I heard the engine cut out in my driveway, I already knew. Not because I'd been warned, because I hadn't been. My son Marcus had not called. He had not texted. He had not so much as sent a vague, "Hey, thinking of you, Mom," in the 3 weeks since our last conversation. And yet there he was at 8:47 on a Tuesday evening, standing on my porch in Decatur, Georgia, with his wife Simone behind him, 2 kids tugging at her sleeves, and a rental truck sitting in my hydrangeas like it belonged there. I want you to picture my house for a second. Nothing extravagant. A craftsman bungalow on a quiet street with oak trees so old they've started lifting the sidewalk. I've lived here for 19 years. I refinished the floors myself. I planted every single thing in that front garden. At 66, after 31 years as a hospital administrator, after raising Marcus mostly on my own, after everything, this house is not just where I live. It is what I am. It is the physical form of every choice I made to put myself first. Finally, after decades of putting everyone else first. And they showed up without asking. Marcus said they needed a few weeks. He said it the way people say it when they mean indefinitely. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. Simone was already on her phone. Voice. Noting instructions to someone about where to forward their mail. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I stepped aside and watched. Honestly, I have to tell you something before we go any further. When I decided to share this story, I went back and forth about it for a long time. Because Marcus is my son. I love him with the specific, permanent love that only a parent understands, the kind that doesn't diminish even when you're furious, even when you're disappointed, even when you're watching him carry a box of his wife's skincare products into your guest room without so much as a thank you. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's a resource being extracted, and I had spent too many years of my life being extracted. So I watched, and I took notes, not metaphorical ones. The first morning, I was at my kitchen table at 6:30, the way I always am, with my chicory coffee and my crossword and the particular silence I have built my retirement around. Simone appeared at 9, in a silk robe I recognized as the one I had given her for Christmas 3 years ago, and she stood in the middle of my kitchen and said, "Marcus said you'd probably handle breakfast." I looked at her over the rim of my mug. "Marcus was mistaken," I said. She blinked. This was not the script she had prepared for. If you have ever been in a room with someone who has decided, before walking in, exactly who you are and exactly what you will do, you know the specific quality of silence that follows when you refuse to be that person. It isn't uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for them. And that discomfort is clarifying in a way that nothing else is. Simone recovered quickly. She always did. She told me there was no food in the house for the kids, that Marcus had a call with a client at 8 and couldn't be interrupted, that I had a car and presumably knew where the grocery store was. I took a long sip of my coffee. "The Kroger on Scott Boulevard opens at 7, I said. "You've had 2 hours. I went back to my crossword. What I didn't tell her, what I was very carefully not showing on my face, was that I had already made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not an emotional one, a structural one. I had decided the night before, while I lay in bed listening to them rearrange my guest room furniture at 11 p.m., that I was not going to argue, plead, explain, or justify. I was going to simply stop cooking, stop accommodating, stop subsidizing, stop making my life convenient for people who had never once considered whether their presence was convenient for me. I went to the basement that morning and locked my chest freezer. It held 6 weeks of carefully portioned meals, good cuts of meat from the butcher on Ponce, a dozen kinds of stock I'd made from scratch. I moved the expensive olive oil, the good coffee, the wine from the Napa trip I'd taken with my friend Patricia last fall, all of it into my room. What remained in the common kitchen was basic: eggs, some bread, a bag of rice. Enough that no one could accuse me of starving anyone. That same afternoon, I went to my utility room and noted every meter reading: water, electricity, gas. I took photographs on my phone with the date stamp visible, because I had already started thinking about what comes next. Marcus tried to broker peace over dinner that night. He'd ordered Thai food with my credit card, which I had left on the counter the week before for a grocery run he'd promised to make and hadn't. I noticed but said nothing. I simply went to my wallet and removed the card before I sat down. "Mom, I think we all just need to decompress," he said. "The move has been really stressful." "What move?" I asked. He looked at his plate. "You haven't moved anywhere yet," I said. "You're in my house." Simone cut in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Claudette, we're family. Family helps each other." I considered that for a moment. I thought about all the times I had helped. The down payment on the car they drove here in. The emergency loan 2 years ago, $12,000 that had never been mentioned again. The plane tickets for the kids' Christmas trip. The cell phone plan I had been paying for since Marcus was 22, and had simply never stopped paying for because stopping felt like a statement, and I hadn't been ready to make it. "Family does help each other," I agreed. "Let's talk about that." The silence at that table was magnificent. I let them sit in it for a full 10 seconds. Then I excused myself, washed my single dish, and went upstairs. "I want to be honest with you right now. That night, sitting in my room, I felt the first real tremor of doubt. Not about whether I was right, about whether I was strong enough to stay right. Because Marcus looked tired in a way that went past the move and past the stress of whatever was happening in his marriage. He looked like a man who had been slowly hollowed out, and part of me, the part that held him when he had nightmares at 4 years old, the part that drove him to every baseball practice, and sat in every parent-teacher conference, that part wanted to go downstairs and just fix it. But fixing it, I knew, would only delay the breaking. So I stayed in my room. I made a list. And I started planning my exit. Patricia's cottage was 3.5 hours away on Street Simon's Island. She'd been asking me to come for months. I texted her that night. "I'm coming Thursday. Bringing wine." She replied with 4 exclamation points and a crab emoji. I didn't tell Marcus or Simone. Thursday morning I was up at 5:30. I loaded 1 bag, made my coffee, watered my plants, and left a note on the kitchen counter that said, "Gone for some air. Help yourselves to the pantry basics. Back when I'm back." I did not leave the code for the chest freezer. I did not leave the Wi-Fi extender password for the back bedroom. I did not leave the number for the plumber they'd need if they tried to run the old guest bathroom shower on full heat the way Simone liked to. I backed out of my driveway in the gray 5:30 light and felt something unlock in my chest. By the time I reached the causeway onto the island, my phone had 7 missed calls. I pulled into Patricia's driveway to the smell of the marsh and the sound of the wind in the palms, and I sat for a moment in the car with my hands in my lap and thought, this is what I was protecting. This stillness. This right to disappear into my own life. Patricia made shrimp and grits and we sat on her screened porch until midnight talking about everything except my son. She knew me well enough to know I'd get to it when I was ready. I got to it on the second night, with a glass of Riesling in my hand and the sound of the ocean behind me. And when I finished telling her the whole story, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Claudette, you already know what to do. You've always known. You're just making sure." She was right. On the second morning of my absence, I logged into my bank account on Patricia's back porch. For 4 years since Marcus was 30, which I am aware is well past any defensible cutoff point, I had been auto-paying his car insurance and one of his family phone lines. It was $340 a month. I had told myself it was nothing. I had told myself it was easy for me, so why not? But that kind of money, given quietly and consistently to someone who never thinks to ask where it comes from, isn't generosity. It's an invisible cord they use to keep you attached. I canceled both auto payments. I ordered the key lime pie on the cafe menu and watched a pelican argue with a smaller bird over a fish. 40 minutes later, Marcus called 6 times in a row. Then a text. "Mom, my card got declined. What happened to my insurance? Call me." I texted back. "Hi, honey. I've restructured my budget. Give me a call when you have a moment and we can talk through it." Then I put my phone face down and finished my pie. The call came 4 minutes later. Marcus was tight-voiced, controlled, trying to stay calm. Simone was audibly not trying to stay calm somewhere behind him. I heard her say, through the phone, "Give me that." And then it was Simone. I want to stop here for a moment because I know that somewhere watching this, someone is thinking, wasn't that cruel? Canceling the card without warning while he was at a gas station? While they had kids with them? While they were in the middle of a difficult time? And I understand why it looks that way. I sat with that question myself, on that porch, in the warm Georgia coast morning. But here is what I came back to. I had been providing that support quietly, without acknowledgement, for 4 years. If I had given it openly, as a gift, as a decision I made and communicated, that would be one thing. Instead, it had become invisible infrastructure, a thing they used and didn't see. The only way to make something visible is to remove it. Simone said, on that phone call, that I was destroying their month. She said I was being vindictive. She said she knew I had never liked her, and this was just an excuse. I listened to all of it. The whole monologue, maybe 4 minutes long, and when she finally ran out of breath, I said, "Simone, I love Marcus and I love the children. I will always be here for them. But I am not here for this. Figure out the bills the way every other adult does. I'll see you when I'm home." I ended the call. I sat back in my chair. The pelican was gone. The tide was going out, slow and inevitable. And the light on the water was the particular gold that only exists just after breakfast on a coast morning. I thought about all the years I had bent myself into shapes that didn't fit me to keep people comfortable. All the mornings I had cooked before I was hungry. All the conversations I had smoothed over before the words I actually wanted to say had even formed. All the times I had looked at my son and seen the cost of loving someone who mistakes your generosity for weakness. I thought, this is the kindest thing I have ever done for him. I drove home 4 days later. The house smelled like takeout containers and a kind of frantic helplessness. There were 3 separate half-finished projects in my living room, a repair Marcus had started and abandoned, a pile of Simone's work documents fanned across my reading chair, an art project the kids had started on the kitchen table with my good craft paper. I did not say a word. I walked through each room slowly, and I took inventory. And then I went to my bedroom and unpacked my bag. That evening I moved every copper pan, every ceramic dish I'd hand-carried back from Portugal, every appliance worth more than $50, into my locked hall closet. I did it methodically, while they watched television in the next room. I heard Simone ask Marcus what I was doing. I heard him say he didn't know. Good. Dinner was, as always, my own meal eaten in my kitchen. The table set for 1. Simone confronted me in the hallway at 9 p.m. She was exhausted, which made her less calculated than usual. She said things she had probably thought many times but had been too strategic to say out loud. That I had always been cold, that Marcus deserved better, that she had tried to have a real relationship with me but I made it impossible, that I clearly cared more about my floors than my grandchildren. I let her speak, every word. And then I said, "I've heard you. Here's what happens next." I handed her the envelope. Inside was not a check. It was a printed list, 12 extended stay hotels within 15 miles, 4 short-term furnished rentals with current pricing, and the number for a housing counselor at a nonprofit I knew from my hospital days. I had put it together that afternoon. "You have 3 days to make a choice," I said. "The children can stay with me as long as they need. You and Marcus are adults, and you have options." Simone's face went through 5 or 6 expressions in quick succession, and none of them were pretty. She told me that I would never see my grandchildren again if I did this. She told me that Marcus would never forgive me. I looked at her with the same calm I had been preserving for 2 weeks, like something precious. "Simone," I said, "a woman who loves her grandchildren doesn't let herself be humiliated in her own home. Those children will know exactly who their grandmother is. I'm not worried about that." I walked into my bathroom and ran a bath. Through the walls I heard them fighting. Really fighting. The kind that comes from being cornered and scared and unable to blame the right person. Marcus was saying things I'd never heard him say before, about feeling like he was always being managed, about decisions that were made without him, about being tired. The kind of things a man who has been asleep for a long time says when he suddenly wakes up. I turned the water hotter and let the jazz from my small speaker cover the rest. The morning of the third day was the quietest morning the house had seen in 2 weeks. I came downstairs to find the first boxes already stacked near the door. Marcus was in the kitchen. Just Marcus. He was making toast, moving around my space with a care he hadn't shown since he arrived, like he was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe for the last time. He looked up when I came in. He looked 5 years older than he had 2 weeks ago. He also looked more like himself than he had in a long time. "We found a place," he said. "2-bedroom over in College Park. It's nothing fancy." "It's yours," I said. He nodded. There was a long pause where both of us understood that everything that needed to be said was not going to be said right now. And that was okay. That there would be phone calls. Later. Quieter ones. I handed him a padded envelope. He hesitated, probably bracing for something complicated. "Just photographs," I said, "from before." He opened it just far enough to see the edge of a photo, the two of us at his high school graduation. Me in a yellow dress, him in a robe 3 inches too short because he'd hit a growth spurt in April. He closed the envelope quickly, the way people do when they're trying not to cry in front of you. "I'm sorry, Mom." "I know you are," I said. "I love you for that." Simone honked from the driveway before he could say anything else. He picked up the last box, squeezed my hand briefly, and walked out the door. I stood in my front garden and watched the car until the street bent and they were gone. Then I turned around and went inside. The house was a mess. That was fine. It was my mess now. I opened every window. I made fresh coffee. I sat in my reading chair, with nothing on it but the book I'd left there before any of this started, and I exhaled something I had been holding for 2 weeks. This is the part of the story I want you to sit with, wherever you're watching from. This moment right here, not the dramatic confrontations, not the locked freezer or the canceled cards or the 3-day ultimatum. This quiet moment after. Because this is what we're actually talking about when we talk about setting limits with people we love. We're not talking about punishment. We're not talking about winning. We're talking about the simple, hard, radical act of returning to yourself. I had not stopped loving Marcus. I had not even stopped wanting good things for Simone. I had stopped accepting that their comfort was worth more than my dignity. Those are completely different things. The mistake most people make, and I say this as someone who made it for years, is believing that maintaining your own limits is an act of aggression toward the people who don't respect them. It isn't. It's an act of clarity. You are simply showing people what was always true, that your kindness is real and specific, not unlimited. That your home is a gift, not a guarantee. That your love has never required you to disappear inside it. What I understood in those 2 weeks that I don't think Simone ever will, at least not yet, is that a person who is forced to see you as a full human being by your refusal to be anything less has not been betrayed. They've been educated. Marcus was educated. I saw it in his face when he picked up those photographs. Something had cracked open in him. Not the marriage, not the relationship with me, something calcified. Something that had been formed long before I arrived in this story. Ask yourself this, and I mean it genuinely. When was the last time someone you love took something from you? Your time, your space, your labor, your money, and you said nothing because it was easier than the conversation? What would change in your life if you said something? I'm not asking you to cancel a car insurance payment today. I'm asking you to locate the place in yourself where you decided that love means being available and useful at all times, and ask where that decision came from, and ask whether it's serving you. That's the question I sat with for the rest of that autumn. 3 months out, my guest room is repainted the color of a Georgia peach. It's a studio space now. I've been working on a quilt I started 7 years ago and never finished. Marcus calls on Sundays. We keep it to the kids. to his new job, to whatever small things feel safe. We're rebuilding slowly, the way you do after something structural shifts. Simone doesn't call. I'm not surprised. And honestly, I'm at peace with it. The grandchildren sent me a drawing last week, crayon houses. A figure they labeled Grandma Katie in enormous letters, each one a different color. I put it on the refrigerator because it earned that place. My neighbor asked me last week what happened to my family that was staying with me. I told her they found their footing. She nodded, satisfied. She didn't need the rest. Now I want to hear from you. And I mean this. If you think Claudette went too far, if you believe family should always find a way to accommodate family regardless of the terms, drop a 1-inch the comments. If you think she didn't go far enough, if you would have said something much sooner, drop a 2. And if you've been in a version of this room, if someone in your life has confused your open door for a deed of ownership, drop a 3 and tell me about it. I read them. Not all at once, but I read them. And tell me, where in the world are you watching this? What time is it there? There is something I genuinely love about imagining this story landing in kitchens and bedrooms and commutes all over the map. If this story hits something in you, something you've been carrying without a name for it, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Every week I bring you a story like this one. Real emotional situations, real decisions, real consequences. The kind of stories that don't end with easy answers but always end with truth. I'll see you in the next one. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences. Fully rewritten and reimagined in Atlanta, Georgia, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.